Hello, and welcome to my talk titled First Aid for the Minds of First Responders by Adriane Peak, Master's Candidate in the Interdisciplinary Graduate Studies at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, Canada. I'm sitting in an old camping chair, facing a small fishing lake in the backcountry somewhere in the interior of British Columbia. There are hundreds of lakes like these here, small pockets of practically untouched water where locals spend summer weekends fishing and camping. It's nearing the end of camping season now, and starting to get a little chilly up at this elevation. Regardless, my cohort and I sit next to a cold campfire. Our feet are up on the edges of the metal barrel used to contain it, and she tells me about her life as a paramedic in a small town. A place where everyone knows each other and you can't go a day in the ambulance without helping someone you may also see in line at the grocery store. The lines between work and life, so to speak, tend to be blurred, and the mental game is substantial. My head is like a filing cabinet, she says, and motions with her hands to frame the shape of a box around her head. There's all of these files in there, and some of them I haven't looked at for years. I just put them in there, put them away, and forget about them. I don't even know what's all in there anymore, and then something will remind me. Her words stop, and nothing really needs to be said at all. Remembering can be painful, so it stands to reason that some of these files are intended to stay closed forever. When we need help, we call an emergency number like 911 and activate the emergency medical services system. A 911 operator directs the needed first responders, such as paramedics, firefighters, police, or search and rescue, to assist you. These individuals continuously bear witness to the trauma resulting from accidents and injuries. As a result, these individuals can experience a type of psychological distress called vicarious trauma, which is defined by the American Counseling Association as the cumulative effect of working with victims and survivors of traumatic events. Vicarious trauma is often grouped with other mental health conditions such as secondary traumatic stress, occupational stress injury, secondary victimization, compassion fatigue, moral injury, countertransference, and burnout, just to name a few. The strain of these predicaments can also lead to long-term psychological illnesses such as post-traumatic stress disorder. The predicament of witnessing the misfortunes, misadventures, and tragedies of others is that these files continue to fill the filing cabinets of their minds. How does an individual deal with the diverse and upsetting emotions that can come with first watching these things happen in front of them and then filing them away? There appears to be no one-size-fits-all prescription for this problem. The study of vicarious traumatization, as determined by Kevin Standish in 2014, focuses on the cognitive effects of indirect exposure to trauma or the witnessing of others' traumatic experiences, which results in a negative shift in worldview. In other words, vicarious trauma is the cost of caring, or the emotional residue of exposure that individuals have from working with people and becoming witnesses to the pain, fear, and terror that trauma survivors have endured either during a crisis or afterwards. It is, quote, the process of change that happens because you care about other people who have been hurt and you feel committed or responsible to help them. Over time, this process can lead to changes in your psychological, physical, and spiritual well-being. Through a typical day's work, first responders are tasked with helping us quickly and are expected to be able to contend with the medical or traumatic situation in which we have found ourselves. From a simple laceration from a bike accident, to conducting CPR on someone who is unconscious, to trying to separate two angry people from hurting each other in a domestic dispute. Because responders are involved in the incident deliberately, and because they are playing an important part in the outcome of the event, they can become what is called a second victim, which is described by Sidney Dekker as a practitioner involved in an incident with potential harm to others, for which they feel personally responsible. While second victims are known to suffer from feelings of guilt and remorse, traumatic stress, and depression, worse can follow if organizational and peer support are inadequate. And for a number of institutional, psychological, and cultural reasons, support often are inadequate. A major portion of emergency services training involves practicing scenarios and learning protocols for medical procedures, and they are very clear-cut. Students are expected to memorize them exactly so that in an emergency, the steps they need to take to ensure our safety become second nature. They are created specifically to reduce or eliminate harm. So where are the protocols to ensure the safety of the mental health of the practitioner? The protocols to follow to ensure the reduction of harm to their mental health? For example, in the entire 548-page textbook for an emergency medical responder in Canada, written by Daniel Limmer and others, there are exactly 3 pages devoted to caring for the mental well-being of the first responder. In my opinion, there's a lot more that could and should be said on this matter before students are sent out into the field. But this aspect of learning the job falls to the students' instructors, management, team leaders, coworkers, and family and friends, the individual's social network. It has become my understanding that the social networks, as well as the confidence instilled through experience and knowledge that, quote, allows first responders to run in and face death while all others are running out. Rodriguez and Cohen, 2016. Once a first responder has attended to a call, sometimes there's no downtime to assess what they've just experienced. Most often, especially in larger, busier cities, these individuals must repack the ambulance, their supplies, clean up, and get ready to go out again. Not until they have gone home later, or maybe after a night's rest, do they have time to reflect on what they have experienced during their workday. Debriefing is a standard practice for many, where the individuals involved in a task will conduct a meeting after the task is complete and report the events that have unfolded. Each individual has a chance to report their personal perspective and information about what happened. Sometimes this is the worker's first chance to speak about the event and perhaps receive some support from other individuals involved. This version of storytelling, a widely researched topic in anthropology as a means of passing down knowledge from elders to students, can also be very therapeutic. When something traumatic happens in our lives, we often find comfort in telling someone else's story. Further to the debriefing process, if an incident requires a lengthier review, there is also a team of individuals available to British Columbian emergency workers. This team is called the Crisis Intervention Support Management, or CISM, and is available 24/7 to all members by phone, online, and some areas in person. They are available to the individuals if they feel as though they could use support in the manner of a simple one-on-one conversation, or an intervention can be requested where everyone involved sits down with the CISM support team and discusses the event. The BC First Responders Mental Health Committee, formed in just 2016, has attempted to acknowledge the mental health support resource problem with the creation of a website, www.bcfirstrespondersmentalhealth.com, supported by a committee of high-level executives from all areas of the emergency medical services and WorkSafe BC, which is the provincial workplace injury insurance provider. These recent efforts are aimed at addressing the importance of mental health support for first responders across the province and to reduce stigma within the work environment. In my hometown, a mental health division dedicated to mental health claims made through WorkSafe BC was only just formed in the Kelowna office in the fall of 2019. The aforementioned website contains substantial information for leaders and businesses to learn stress management techniques, but is exemplary in its shortfalls in providing straightforward mental health resources for first responders working in the field. This type of top-down approach does not do a lot in actually assisting workers in accessing resources. Research in medicine and psychology are showing an increase in detection of psychological disorders affecting first responders. Despite the growing attention to the needs of these individuals, both internally and externally to the community, as seen by Greenetcher and others in 2019, meaning if the treatments we are providing to these individuals were in fact alleviating the symptoms of vicarious trauma and all of its other names, shouldn't we be witnessing a decrease in diagnoses of disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder? Through my own research and that of many others, I have learned that the discourse on traumatic stress still favors a clinical diagnosis of such mental disorders when they eventually present themselves, instead of attending to the mental health of individuals in a proactive manner. As discussed by Arthur Kleinman in many of his publications from 2008, 2009, and 2012, quote, global health seems to have almost nothing to do with caregiving. This must not happen. Medicine's failure in caregiving remains one of the great narratives in the social science and humanities study of medicine. The existing research regarding the prevalence of traumatic stress in first responders can be found in quantitative reports, such as meta-analyses of clinical and statistical nature. Suggestions for future research are commonly recommended as focused qualitative and ethnographical studies. This confirms the problem stated previously by Kleinman in 2012, that, quote, relatively little ethnographic attention has entered on the state's failure of responsibility to protect the mentally ill by providing healthcare services such as including resources that support the families who are placed under the greatest financial, social, and moral pressure. He also states that it may now be a more promising time to undertake a new effort at thinking through global mental health, and medical anthropology should play a larger role in that rethinking. As it is becoming more widely acknowledged that our minds and bodies are also indisputably linked, growing bodies of research from the disciplines of medicine, psychology, sociology, and even new subdisciplines emerging, such as psychotraumatology, offer interdisciplinary perspectives within the last few years. What is not prevalent is the contribution of an anthropologically grounded focus on the cultural factors contributing to the experience of mental health by first responders, and how these wider social support systems are understood within the community. Medical anthropology is concerned with the ways in which individuals interact with medical systems within their own cultural context. The subfields of medical and psychological anthropology speak to these connections by exploring the interrelationships between biomedicine, our physiological, and our psychological well-being, as well as our cultural environments. Of particular influence in the history of medical anthropology and how psychological studies were first realized within the field are early 20th century scientists Margaret Mead and Ruth Benedict, both studying under the father of anthropology, Franz Boas. These women wrote about the significance of culture on personality, Benedict going as far to say that culture is personality. They were among the first to insist on exploring the cultural and therefore psychological aspect of individual experience as a fundamental value of true anthropological study. During my undergrad in anthropology and psychology, the discovery of medical anthropology meant that my great interest in the reasons that people do what they do could be combined with my fascination with medicine and psychology. Upon moving into the Interdisciplinary Graduate Studies program at UBC Okanagan, I've continued to enjoy examining the complicated relationships between our cultures, environments, and our psychological well-being. I'm very passionate about using the knowledge I've gained from discovering these important intersections to uncover the potential ways we can improve the lives of ourselves and others. I've created a nonprofit organization, Save Our Ship Society, to take an active role in providing connections to mental health resources for first responders in the Okanagan. Also, this year, after an extensive interview and training process, I was also accepted into the Central Okanagan Search and Rescue Team. The organization supports my love of learning through countless hours of continuous training and endless opportunities to help others within our community through tasks assisting in the search for missing persons, rescue, and recovery. Through my current graduate research, I'm using an interdisciplinary approach to examine the ongoing challenges of mental health support systems for first responders, and drawing on community-based research methods and ethnographical one-on-one interviews. The objective is to achieve a better understanding through listening to the lived experience of first responders, to learn of the barriers to mental health support and how to improve the access to resources. If the study of anthropology has taught me anything, it is that we have the most potential to help each other when we really listen to one another. So thank you for listening to my talk today.